LA continues to be a problem.
Too quiet? Are you serious?
Well, yeah, but I don't think it's volume. I think it's timbre.
What?
It's just the depth of your voice.
Well, I could talk like this.
Beaver Dam, Wisconsin's got peppers and a stage. Beaver Dam, Kentucky's where Bill Monroe first played. Beaver Dam, anywhere the people all say, have a gosh dang beaver darn great damn day.
I'm as surprised as you are. Welcome to the Great Beaver Fiasco, episode 4, as we are broadcasting from right above Art on the Town studio. Check them out online at artonthetownwi.com. They have lots of cool art projects throughout the week. They have pottery classes, they have painting classes. Even if you just want to start something new, like, I want to maybe embroider or start stained glass, they have a class and the space for you. Guys, we have a lot of great conversation coming up in this episode. LA, how has your week been so far? We haven't really caught up. By the way, my name is Thomas. I'm a host here.
I'm Craig.
Hey, Craig. I'm LA Bass.
Hi, LA.
And my week can't ever be anything but fantastic because, that's just how it is for me. Pretty great. I think I'm now on like every dating site as of last night besides Tinder.
So you signed up on more last night?
I'm on Hinge, yeah. I'm not unhinged, I'm on Hinge.
Do you like Hinge? It's a clean interface. I like
Hinge. So far it
Hinge
seems to be fun. I don't
it.
know. It's like shopping for, people.
What
It's terrible.
So are you using the same attributes you'd look for in a bottle of ketchup, or you are now a possible boyfriend?
And what's that? You don't want it to get gunked up around the side and you need to clean the cap?
No artificial sweeteners?
Actually, the latest thing about ketchup is that it tends to annoy me because they all have those crazy lids on it. So I think I might be more picky about ketchup.
Are you more of a packet person when it comes to ketchup?
No.
Okay.
You don't like the nozzles?
No,
Like the little
squeezy
nipples?
nozzles. The nipples are terrible.
But you get a direct stream of ketchup exactly where you can make little smiley faces on your
if it doesn't
plate.
knock your hot dog off the plate.
Wow, I don't know how you're doing it. But so are you saying that you just want the glass bottle with the screw-off top?
I would love that, but I also don't want to spend $25 on, 10 ounces of ketchup. So we do get it. I just take the lid off and then kind of just...
Whoa, wait. You
Yeah.
get
What?
the plastic squeezable ketchup and you take the lid off instead of squeezing it out because you're afraid you're going to jettison your hot dog?
I do. Someone told me that a while back. A very smart person brought that. They're like, just take the lid off. So now I do that, and now my food stays on the plate. It doesn't skyrocket across the kitchen floor.
Sounds like you're a high-velocity squeezer, so why not just squeeze a little bit less than you are?
Sounds like you're high. I mean, I can't...
Actually, maybe I'm just stronger than I realize. Maybe I should just be a little less excited about eating that hot dog.
Well, I see you working the stress ball in between episodes of the Great Beaver Fiasco. Maybe just lay off a
My
little bit.
secret's out.
Maybe you should cut down on the hot dogs if that's the problem. I mean, they're not that healthy of a food. Veggie dogs are maybe better.
The kind that I get, we've been over this. They are not mechanically separated. They're beef. They're delicious. They're high foods of protein.
High foods of protein. Wow.
How
Good
was
source
your
of
week?
protein.
So is that the same search function that you're using for Hinge? You're looking for somebody that's a high source of protein?
Not mechanically separated.
And maybe they should be mechanically separated. Men, that is, not hot dogs.
So of 10 possible advertisements of mechanically separated men, how many are you turning left on? Is it like one right out of every 9 lefts?
Probably maybe one right out of 20 lefts. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Being very picky.
All right.
Well, you should be. You know what you want, though.
Yeah, now I want a hot dog.
We do not serve hot dogs on this podcast. Craig, do you want to give a little insight into your week?
Well, let's see. I mean, my week has been all about recording episode 4 of our podcast, which I guess if we were a Star Wars series, this would be like the first one in chronological order, but not the first one in storytelling order.
So you mean that episode 5 is going to be our best episode, then?
It probably would be. Whatever we have next
and then it's going to
week.
drop down. We're going to have... What's our equivalent of Ewoks in episode 6?
Well, I mean, the beginning of episode 6 will probably be really good, but then it'll kind of devolve, and then there will be too much of a lightsaber fight between you and LA.
Okay, so I'm not, these huge Star Wars nerds that you guys are. So does that mean 6 is going to be the prequel, the first one?
No.
5 is. Did you
No.
just say this and I was like spacing out?
Yeah. That's how we know you're not a super Star Wars.
Okay.
We're in A New Hope right now,
New Hope.
which didn't even have that name before when they released it originally.
I think it was just Star Wars at that time, but then they
just Star Wars.
retroactively. I'm going to be honest, starting episode 4 now, I have less hope because we've had more technical issues since starting here. And this is a whole different, island of monkeys that we need to be opening up right now, which we
foreshadowing.
will be discussing with our special guest for this episode, Roger Noll, just a guy to some, but a local historian of Beaver Dam and a guy who's been sharing stories, enriching how we feel and what we know about our town for the last 20 plus years.
That's very true, but I just realized you bypassed how your week was going, unless, of course, just because of the technical issues, you don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, how was your week?
It's fine. It's been a lot of technical issues. I've started new employment, so I'm starting to realize how life is stressful, and especially when you're trying to figure out new systems and things don't go wrong, Sometimes you just need to sit down by yourself and just take a big old bottle of ketchup and squeeze it all out on a plate and then complain about it.
Yeah, so is that what you're doing tonight?
I'm going to be squeezing probably 3 bottles when I get home.
Okay, well, I
return to
hope
the
you have a
ketchup.
lot of hot dogs for that ketchup.
Non-mechanically separation
Good.
will be the go-through here.
I can sleep well knowing that.
The Empire Strikes Ketchup.
Let's strike that and get ready for this squeezing of our damn news.
We begin out of Columbiana County.
Columbiana?
Yeah, Columbiana County. That's where Lisbon, Ohio is located.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The Beaver Local School District. That's what they call it over there. They call it Beaver Local.
I like that, yeah.
That's their school district name. They will soon have a new state-of-the-art indoor sports complex with a 50-yard field, a fitness area, and a weight room. The district treasurer says the project is being covered 100% by refinancing of bonds, some COVID relief money, and donations. In particular, that $7 million project will be named after former Beaver Local alumnus and former NFL player Derek Wolfe, due to be open in July of 2025.
As someone that does not follow the NFL, who is Derek Wolfe?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because if I'm known for anything, it's my knowledge of football. And this is just off the top of my head. I believe he was born around February 24th, 1990. He was a former defensive end for many years. He played at first, I want to say, for the University of Cincinnati. And then...
This is very specific, considering you know nothing about sports outside of this conversation.
Then he was selected, I want to say 36th. He was selected overall in the 2012 NFL draft.
Very impressive.
He played 8 seasons it was, with the Denver Broncos before signing with the Baltimore Ravens. But then he wound up announcing his retirement in 2022, right around July, late July, maybe like the 28th. Somewhere around there.
Hey, if the fiasco doesn't work out, you want to start a sports podcast, I think you're well underway here.
Wow,
Very impressive
The
collection of knowledge.
So we've been trying to get Joe Namath, because he's from Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania.
Yes.
Maybe we should try to get Derek Wolfe. I feel terrible, first of all, if his name is Derek Wolfe, especially having all that other knowledge about him right off the top of my head. You would think that would be, the pronunciation would be
Well,
something.
it could also be Derek Wolfe.
Yeah,
could be a Wolf.
Shoot, he could be a Wolf. I didn't even think about that. This is one of the things that you could expect from the Great Beaver Fiasco: our love of sports to come shining through.
Can't hold it back.
I love hitting those balls. If this was a baseball analogy.
Do you?
LA, back to you.
Yes.
Back to me, yes. And other sports news. In Minnesota, the number 2 seeded Hayfield Viking girls basketball team defeated number 15 Wabasha Kellogg 86-38 in a Section 1A tournament opener last Thursday. Hayfield senior Natalie Beaver joined a privileged class as Beaver scored 39 points in the win for Hayfield, pushing her career total past 2,000 points.
Good job, Natalie Beaver.
What sport was that again?
Wait, so that's our second Beaver, right? In terms of high school sport, didn't we have a Kayla Beaver?
Roll Tide.
did.
That's right. Kayla Beaver threw a shutout in Alabama's season opener.
That's right.
A no hitter. So Roll Tide.
Go Kayla.
That's right. Yeah.
Beaver Bama.
we are definitely going to be following their careers because we love sports here at the Great Beaver Fiasco.
I'm not going to say whether or not sports makes me a little soporific, but maybe that's an excellent tie-in to our next story.
In other wildlife news, we have 2 parrots that wish they were beavers. They are in the Lincolnshire Zoo in England, and apparently they have been swearing up a storm. So something had to be done about this because it was causing quite a stir. Of course, parents didn't want their children to hear these bad words, these swear words. So they were retrained. Now apparently these parrots are doing something even worse.
Uh-oh.
They're singing holiday songs outside of the holiday season.
Oh, no.
We wish you a Merry Christmas.
Oh, my gosh.
In the middle of February.
So these trainers that retrain the parrots...
Retraining the parrots or the parents?
Parrots.
Well, how about this story coming out of the Austin Daily Herald in South Carolina? The 3rd annual Beaver's Den Polar Plunge for Special Olympics brought in more than $8,000 in donations. That's tremendous. The event held at Lake Watery.
Because they ran out of names?
Yeah,
Wow.
I guess, well, call it what it is sponsored by the Law Enforcement Torch Run and Sergeant Matt Southern, with the charitable group told WACH.com that these fundraisers make a big splash. Southern says that the Beaver's Den Polar Plunge is one of 11 plunges that will be held across South Carolina, and every dime, every penny goes to support those Special Olympic athletes. Last year in South Carolina, law enforcement officers raised over $1 million.
Wow.
Really? They should raise some money to change the name of the lake. So is the street streetery? I mean, is the sidewalk sidewalky?
Well, it's kind of like that story with, wasn't there the naming of like a ship in the UK, and Bodie McBoatface was the #1 name? Like, it's kind of the same.
Boatface.
So you're
No
suggesting
way.
that this lake was named after a social media campaign 80 years ago, 100 years ago?
It could have been some sort of equivalent to that. What would you prefer, Lake Desert?
Lake Moistury?
Well, I mean, it could just be Lake Wet.
Wettery. I do like that, yes.
Would you ever do a polar plunge? Have you ever done a polar plunge?
I have not, but I would like to.
I haven't, but I was doing this for a long time, where I would wash my face in the morning with cold water.
Not the same thing.
100 splashes. You try it tomorrow morning and tell me.
Why are you
Yes.
counting 100 splashes?
Because that was the thing. That's what you had to do. It was a 100 cold wash face splash.
Was the water
Did I
running
say
the
that
whole time?
backwards?
You just have a big
Yes,
bucket of cold water?
It was. And for somebody who's
sounds
a
like a
little
big waste of
OCD like
water.
me, it was terrible, actually. So that's why I stopped doing it. Because,
Well, you lost count, so you had to start over again at
no,
one?
I never lost count. It was just that all of a sudden, it's, first of all, my nose is the most protruding thing on my face, obviously, like most people, but I do have a fairly substantial nose.
I would hate to meet the person who's got something other than the nose protruding the most on their face.
It would get so cold. I was in pain. So it's supposed to be good for your skin, to have the ice cold water on your face. I don't know if any of my children ever heard me out, if they were outside the bathroom.
Because you'd be like, splash, ow, splash, ow.
so cold. But your nose was probably never more exfoliated than it was with 100 splashes.
Maybe that's why it's so red lately. I don't know.
Protruding as it does.
Anyway, so that's the closest I'm going to get. I don't think I'm ever going to do the polar plunge.
You think you have a protruding nose? Next time it rains and you don't have an awning outside, just stand underneath my schnoz.
Oh, you have a nice nose.
Bodie McBoatface. Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I cannot do cold showers. Like, I have tried, and I'm not even going to attempt it again in my life.
I know people who do. They say that you really only have to do it for like 30 seconds to get the benefit of a cold shower, similar to the polar plunge benefit.
Yeah, that's the word I have trouble with when it comes to cold showers and polar plunges is the word benefit. It just doesn't. I have a hard time believing that is really the true definition of benefit. I think that's a tease word that they tell you, oh, there's all these wonderful benefits. Yeah, no, I think you just freeze your butt off.
Okay,
as all that
so what do you
happens.
think the reasoning then is behind getting people to do this?
The polar plunge will
Yeah, to just make fools of themselves?
Yeah, it's a thing to know. It's a thing to do.
Money?
Humans like to do dumb things, We see ice water, we want to jump in it. I mean, that's human nature.
But I think there is an actual benefit. If you do something that you really dislike, like jumping into an ice cold lake or taking a cold shower, it prepares you for the things that you have to put up with, like, I don't know, marriage.
Oh.
It makes that a lot easier,
there
doesn't
you
it?
go.
How long have you been married now? That is amazing.
I have this insight from many sources, so I can't divulge any of them. That's on a separate podcast.
Not from me. No, from me. Yes.
I'm going to wind up getting in trouble for that because somebody's going to listen to this podcast and think that I said that instead of you saying that. You, Thomas Rayfeld, who said that about marriage, Craig Warmbold, who is married.
You don't like it because you don't see the benefit. Therefore, you must love being married.
I don't see the benefit of polar plunges?
Yeah.
He likes being married.
Because if you did see the benefit of a polar plunge, you would see the benefit of that kind of distracting you from marriage, which you don't. Because you enjoy being married.
I feel like there are
your lovely wife.
I think there's as many benefits in marriage as there is in a polar.
We seem to be encountering some technical difficulties.
Whoa, Craig.
Oh, wait, did I say that out loud?
You said that out loud.
And that brings us to our final story of the news segment. The Beaver Dam High School Band.
Oh, yes.
Is hosting their first annual mattress sale fundraiser. They need your help. They ask you to come on out to the high school and experience a full showroom of high-quality mattresses, brands like Simmons Beauty Rest, Beauty Rest Black, and Mayloaf? Should I know how to pronounce that?
Mayloaf?
Mayloaf?
It's not really a loaf, it's a loaf.
At a fraction of the price. Many mattresses made right here in Wisconsin. The fundraiser is going to be held Saturday, March 9th, 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. at the Beaver Dam High School Fieldhouse. This is a one-day event. You can find out more information on their the Beaver Dam Unified School District Facebook page. Go to the school district website. Help out the Beaver Dam High School Band.
I'm going to say this. This is a great idea. I'm all in fan of unique fundraisers. First time I've ever done this before. But is this really the best location to be doing a mattress fundraiser where kids are already in a setting where they feel like sleeping through classes most of the day? Are we going to show up and see that these beds are just loaded up with exhausted teenagers?
I was more worried that they would just be using the mattresses in place of floor mats and things like that, and they'd be pole vaulting onto them. And
ooh, I would like that. Yeah.
It's really unusual. Like, who came up with this idea, I wonder?
I don't know. That's an excellent question.
I mean, so also because it's a fundraiser, so a lot of people will want to buy these and so that they can raise the money for this cause. Mm-hmm. So I kind of want to go there just to watch all the cars driving away with mattresses on top.
You do need to be prepared if you're going to go buy a mattress to bring the mattress back home with you.
I know, but that means people are going to put them on top of their cars. You know that.
Yeah, well, yeah, that'll happen. Bring some bungee cord. It's probably not.
Well, that's not unusual. Most people have cords, like you say, just because of Christmas trees. Mm-hmm. You know, people are driving Christmas trees on top of their cars. How is that any different than a mattress?
All the time. We got parrots singing Christmas carols for crying out loud.
We do, but if aliens see this happening, they're going to think that what's this mass exodus of mattresses from a school?
So you're worried about how you take home mattresses from the field house.
I am.
You're worried about kids using the mattresses to sleep throughout the day as if their desks aren't comfortable enough.
I don't know.
That is not my concern, and I do have a big concern with this.
What's
hygiene?
your concern?
I know. I don't want to say anything negative because these kids are working hard, and I'm a big supporter of music, and the high school band is wonderful, but I mean, I gotta say it. I am not comfortable with what they're saying here, with what the wording is.
What do you mean?
First annual? I mean, maybe for the second annual, but that's awful presumptuous to think that you're going to have another event. This is only your first one.
Yeah.
This is just the first. It's not the first annual. It's just first.
That's
true. It can't. So it's something annual, and we really have to make sure. I'm looking at you, that we pronounce annual correctly here. That is a word that you could only really use after more than one thing has happened.
Yes.
In my opinion, yes. I don't think you should be going around willy-nilly calling something that's only happening once an annual.
I'm with you. No, I'm fully supportive of your
they
position.
seriously should just call it the first mattressy sale fundraiser.
Mattressy
sale.
Yeah.
Yeah, you like
That's what they should
mattressy.
call it.
Okay, kind of
would
like
like
watery.
Yeah,
I would
exactly.
like a musical pun if that was somehow connected or maybe thrown in there. I don't know what it would be.
One singular sensation sale.
Sure.
Mattress sale?
Sure. Well, let's
Da,
start
da,
that
da, da, da. I think there might be some copyright issues there.
They could probably work that out. It's
Well,
a fundraiser.
I'm looking forward to their second annual.
I am too, because I'm wondering about that.
But I'm not calling it an annual until they have number 2.
Okay.
And we know about number 2. Our number 2 here was pretty solid.
We know a lot about number 2.
It was. It's on our Facebook page and also our YouTube page, Supper Club Media. You can, in fact, watch episode 1, 2, 3, some shorts. We have lots of great stuff there. Like and follow us on Facebook as well. The Great Beaver Fiasco is on Podbean. It's on Spotify. And Facebook is our social media platform of choice along with Instagram.
I guess
That
that would
is
have been
right.
like the Attack of the Clones, maybe, then. Our number 2 episode, our big number 2, Attack of the...
Do you think our number 2 made a bigger splash?
Yeah, that
than
wasn't a very good movie, though.
Well, I think it was better than the first one.
well received?
Number 2? Yeah, I think it was. We had a better guess in episode 2 than episode 1. That is for sure. Not going to say
I'll
anything
have to
else
think
about
about that one.
Speaking of special guests, we're going to be joined with our special guest for episode 4 of the Great Beaver Fiasco, local Beaver Dam, Wisconsin historian Roger Noll. And I cannot wait. Roger, once you start Roger on a subject, it's kind of like surfing. You ride the wave. You're not deciding where that wave goes. You just learn to hold on and see what sort of history is going to wash over your brain.
We're going to say, Roger, Monkey Island, go! And then...
Pretty much.
Exactly.
Exactly.
He takes it from there. It's amazing.
Do you have any questions about mechanically separated hot dogs that you might want to ask Roger?
No, I just, I want to know if he knows any paranormal stories about Beaver Dam's past. And I think maybe he does.
We're going to find all that out and more when we come back with the Great Beaver Fiasco.
Beaverton, Oregon's got the Jenkins Estate.
Nearby.
Beaver Falls, PA is where Joe Namath first played. Beaver Dam, Wisconsin's where the people all say, have a doggone beaver darn great damn day.
Hi, this is Craig, and on behalf of all of us here at the Great Beaver Fiasco, we want to thank Chris and the good folks at Art on the Town in downtown Beaver Dam for generously furnishing us with a location to record our ridiculously unnecessary podcast. Art on the Town is a studio for creative experiences for all ages, interests, and skill levels. They offer classes. You can paint your own pottery. There's drop-in art-making experiences, exhibition space. You could use their studio and materials for your own creative endeavors. Whether you're looking for fun, creative experiences with friends and family, or are interested in learning how to become proficient at a specific type of art making, Art on the Town at 127 Front Street offers all of that and more. Check them out at artonthetownwi.com. Those of us here at the Great Beaver Fiasco know you'll have a gosh dang beaver darn great damn time at the Art on the Town studio in downtown Beaver Dam.
Have a gosh dang beaver darn great damn day.
And welcome back to the Great Beaver Fiasco, your go-to Beaver podcast and YouTube show, if things do work, which is not always the case, as we find out in our mythical studio, which sometimes has some technical issues. Joining us for our interview segment for episode number 4, you guys, we're talking with Beaver Dam local historian Roger Noll. Yes.
So often you've been kind of described as like the ultimate Fred MacMurray collector. But this isn't something that necessarily goes back to your college years and studying history, or even your growing up years. You weren't necessarily like a huge fan of My Three Sons or anything.
Well, that's correct. I mean, I watched it.
Yeah.
And, of course, by the time I really would be watching it, it was the color years, and those just stank. They were just terrible.
How do you really feel about it?
But the black and whites were just classics.
Yeah.
I mean, they were just amazing stories. And, they got like awards for those years. But, yeah, I was not a big fan. I watched a lot of movies when I was a kid, though. I think one of the first movies I ever saw was a Fred MacMurray movie at St. Patrick's. It was a Miracle of the Bells. And I can remember seeing other ones. I remember when June Haver was here, which is Fred's wife. She said, "Roger, have you seen any of my movies?" And I said, "I've seen a couple." I had a couple of the VHS tapes that were available for movies. But actually, then I started watching them all, and I had seen all of them. I had seen every one of them. I just didn't realize it was her in them.
But you're not saying that she was unmemorable.
Oh, she was.
I'm not saying it either.
She was very memorable.
Okay.
I mean, just a beautiful woman. Very kind, very generous.
So Fred MacMurray is, that's one of the things about Beaver Dam. This is Fred MacMurray's hometown. He was raised here in Beaver Dam, Wisconsin. But he wasn't born here, was he?
You're going to get into that, aren't you? Okay, going way back. His mother was considered the most beautiful girl in Beaver Dam. A little flighty, but a beautiful girl. And the Presbyterian's Church, Grace Presbyterian Church, their minister was T.J. MacMurray. And his son was a violinist, a concert violinist. And they got together, kind of had a shotgun wedding, and then he went off to do his concerts. And she was pregnant during one of these concert tours, and they happened to be in Kankakee, and that's where Fred was born. But as soon as he was born, they sent him back up to Beaver Dam.
Uh-huh. Yeah, but Kankakee does like to claim that Fred MacMurray
I know.
was born there.
Well, I mean, they can claim it, but it really has no... To me, it doesn't. It's the same way with the Righteous Brothers. Bobby Hatfield. He was born here, but if he was here a year, that would be amazing. And my feeling is, how can you be proud of someone from being from your location if you haven't had any responsibility in the upbringing of that person? I mean, it's the parents, the neighbors, the fellow kids, your teachers, your pastors. Those are the people. Then you can say, he came from our city, and he was part of it, and we had a part in making him what he became. And so that's why. So I don't really, everybody says Bobby Hatfield, Beaver Dam. We had nothing to do with him. What was amazing, his father was a stove salesman, and he didn't even represent Monarch.
Wow.
But yeah,
that's a good point. That's a very good point. I feel the same way.
I would say out of all the interviews, out of all the biographies, 90% of those interviews that they did with Fred MacMurray, he mentions Beaver Dam, Wisconsin.
Because he loved growing up here. He enjoyed it.
Oh, yeah. And he came back often.
That's a pretty strong argument, actually, that where you're born doesn't really make as much of a difference as how many formative years that you lived in a community. How long did Fred actually live in Beaver Dam when he was a child?
Well, okay, he came back initially, and because his father was a concert violinist, his grandfather on his mother's side disowned her. Because anybody in the entertainment business back then was considered somewhat shady. And also I found out, and really I only found this out like in the past couple of years, Fred's aunt and sister to his father went on to become a big vaudeville star.
Really?
And she was in movies with W.C. Fields.
I'll be sober tomorrow, and you'll be crazy for the rest of your life.
Did she grow up here?
Yeah. She was here when Fred was here. When his dad was here, Frederick Sr.
Did she graduate from Beaver Dam High School?
No, she did not. Okay. Melita did, his mother. But yeah, she was in the famous W.C. Fields movie where he plays a barber. Her name was Fay Holderness. She didn't go by Fay MacMurray. And she was in Laurel and Hardy movies. She was in a lot of silent movies and a lot of the early talkies. So that may have been another reason, because being in vaudeville would really have been something that was not looked kindly upon. So her father disowned her. So when they came back to Beaver Dam, she lived in the house that her father owned on Park Avenue. But the only way she could live in that house was because her sister rented the front room. So she could only go in the front room. Her father would not allow them to go in any other room. It was crazy. It's just a crazy situation. So he's there until about 3 years old. Then they moved to Madison for a while, and he's teaching at a musical school.
This is Fred MacMurray's dad.
Right. And then they moved to Gilroy, California. And in fact, I got, people do consider me like some kind of expert on him. And I got a little note from some guy in Gilroy, California that said, up in the bell tower of the Presbyterian Church in Gilroy, California, if you go up there, marked off with etched with a knife is Fred MacMurray.
Really?
Yeah.
What a rebel.
So anyway, then his father just walks out on him. It's the old I'm going to go get milk kind of thing. Oh, wow. And he never sees his father again after 5 years old. So then they come back to Beaver Dam.
Fred's 5. A 5-year-old Fred MacMurray comes back to Beaver Dam.
Right. And so he's here until maybe about 12 years old. She gets a job in Madison as a secretary, and she's worried that he doesn't have enough male influence in his life because he's only got his grandmother, and his grandfather had died, and of course had disowned him anyway. So she sends him to a military school in Quincy for 1 year. And then he does so well, he goes in and he's probably like about 5'4", and by the end of the year he's 6'2".
Oh, wow.
Oh. And he just hates it. He just hates it. And he just begs his mother to take him out of there. And then they come back to Beaver Dam, and then he spends the rest of his time here until he graduates.
So under the philosophy of Roger Noll's that if you're raised somewhere, it's more important than being born somewhere, is Faye Holderness MacMurray, is she a Beaver Dam resident, or is someone else going to claim her?
No, I would say she's not. I think she was only here for like a couple of years, and I don't know if she was even schooled here. She was much older than her brother. So, yes, I do not believe that Faye Holderness is Beaver Dam.
So we won't be inducting her into any kind of Wall of Fames or anything like that.
No.
Before we cork the Fred MacMurray back into the bottle and kind of open up some other topics that came up in our previous episode about the history of Beaver Dam, why is it important, do you think, to keep sharing these stories about Fred? You say that Fred MacMurray is Beaver Dam's native son. Why is it so important to talk about Fred MacMurray in the 21st century?
Well, I don't know if it is that important. I just find it interesting. And I think some other people find it interesting. I have no problem with people coming up to me and saying, God, I'm really sick of hearing about Fred MacMurray. I don't blame them. Hey, if you don't like it, that's fine with me.
They don't have to listen.
Yeah.
But there's something about the history of a hometown, the history of a location, particularly small town America, to be able to grab onto some of those diamonds in the rough, some of those shooting stars that made it farther than most people. I mean, I'm sure there are kids that are born today that have no idea that Fred MacMurray was not just like a movie star in the 20th century, but he was the movie star.
Yeah, I mean, he was as big as like Clark Gable, Humphrey Bogart. For Paramount, he was the star, and Paramount was the second best studio in Hollywood. The first, obviously, MGM. In 1942, he was the highest paid actor in movies.
Wow.
So this ties into what we've been talking about in the last several episodes and kind of leads us into, with a left turn here, if you will, our Big Gnaw, which is about weird histories in small towns, particularly some of the weird things that have happened here in the city of Beaver Dam over the decades and over the last century or two, maybe.
I do have a quick question. It's kind of setting this up. And Roger, I don't know how familiar you are with the strange history of other communities, but just looking at Beaver Dam with a magnifying glass, how strange is Beaver Dam? Is it pretty average as far as small town usual history goes?
I say it's amazingly superior to other towns.
Okay.
Well, for
No
one
bias.
thing, in 1937, it was named the most typical small town in America.
1937. I didn't know
Well, that's
that.
not that unusual.
Was
is
that by
it?
Life magazine?
No. Oh, this is a long story.
It was the Beaver Dam Daily Citizen.
No. I can tell you that when people woke up, they opened their newspapers, and everyone in the United States opened their newspapers to read, Beaver Dam is the most typical small town in America. There were entire pages of pictures of Beaver Dam throughout the country. In fact, you can go down to the library. There's a book that's about 3 feet by 5 feet that has all of those paper clippings from all across the country.
Wow.
But the story was, it wasn't true. What happened was a London journalist from the London Times was told to come over here and find the most typical small town in America. Well, he spends all of his time in New York and Washington and blows his entire, account, his travel account. Finally, the London Times gets a hold of him and says, we need that article. And so what he does is he goes to the Department of Agriculture and he gets a study. And it was just a basic study. This was the Depression. And they were just doing a study on towns throughout the United States. There were about 14 of them. And they were just looking at, what's the industry like? What's the pay like? What's the agriculture like? What's the school systems like in all of these towns? And so he just does an eeny, meeny, miny, moe. And he picks Beaver Dam, Wisconsin. And he figures, well, nothing's going to happen. I'll just send it back to London. They'll print it, and that'll be it. Well, what happened was the UPI service picked up the London Times article and put it all across the nation.
Oh, man.
Now, we had newspapers from across the country just inundating Beaver Dam. Radio stations were here. WGN came up here, and they did nationwide radio broadcasts. And they interviewed Mary Spellman. In those pictures, what the pictures would basically say is the most typical small town school. And then they'd have a picture of the high school. And then they'd say the most typical student. And then they'd have pictures of some students. And then they'd say the most typical family. And then they'd have a picture of a family eating dinner. And then they'd have, and these pictures were all across the country. Finally, they get a hold of somebody from the Department of Agriculture. And they're just, the Department of Agriculture is just inundated with, how did you come up with Beaver Dam as the most typical small town in America? I mean, and finally they put out just like a one-sentence statement. They said, Beaver Dam is not the most typical small town in America. It is an average town.
Oh. Wow. Unbelievable. Ooh. What a letdown after all that time of being so typical just to find out that you're average.
And I'll tell you, Hollywood definitely knew what was going on. In many interviews, they'd ask Fred MacMurray, well, what's it like being from the most typical small town? But then they made a movie about it. It's called Magic Town. And it stars, unfortunately, it didn't star Fred MacMurray. It starred Jimmy Stewart.
Wait, are you telling me there's a Jimmy Stewart movie out there that's based on Beaver Dam, Wisconsin?
Yeah, I mean, they don't use the name Beaver Dam, Wisconsin. The thing is, it's all about this small town who becomes the most typical small town in America. And again, the same thing happens in that movie that happened here. Was all the newspapers started writing articles about it. Everybody just inundated the city. It's Jimmy Stewart and Jane Wyman. It's available at the library if you want to.
So two things come to mind. I guess it's not surprising that newsrooms across America are struggling now based on this story and seeing how the London Times had enough money to send a reporter for one story about how typical a small town was. But you said that this was 1937. Did this help raise Fred MacMurray's star at that time?
Well, his star was super high at that time.
Okay.
I mean, he was a superstar after his first movie. I mean, he basically got off the train with Jimmy Stewart and Henry Fonda, and I mean, they arrived in Hollywood just at the exact same time. And Jimmy Stewart and Henry Fonda just languished for like years before they became stars. But Fred, bam, right, his first movie, 1935, he was a superstar.
Can I pose a question to you, Roger? If you had a chance to meet any three of those individuals, but only for 1 hour dinner-long conversation, Fred MacMurray, Jimmy Stewart, or Henry Fonda, who are you choosing?
Well,
you've already met Fred MacMurray,
no,
right?
I haven't.
Oh.
Only his wife and his daughter.
Okay.
But in the viewpoint of the best actor, I'd like to meet Jimmy Stewart.
Ooh.
But in the viewpoint of, gosh, I'd really like to know Fred MacMurray and, talk to him about Beaver Dam and everything, it would be Fred MacMurray.
Well, now, Jimmy Stewart has a Beaver Dam connection as well, in that he learned acting from one
Eric Colkhurst,
who was a graduate of Beaver Dam High School.
Well, I have to agree. I would want to meet Jimmy Stewart. You didn't ask me, but I have a lot of questions for him.
So is Henry Fonda getting any love on this show right now, or none? Okay,
guess not.
Poor Henry Fonda. That's Beaver Dam, Wisconsin for you, kind of there in a nutshell. You got your Fred MacMurray, you've got your typical town. We haven't really talked about anything weird though. That's coming up here in our Big Gnaw. Some of the weird things, some of the animal situations we've had over the years in this town called Beaver Dam, Wisconsin. We've got monkeys, we've got giraffes, we've got whole zoos full of weird things happening.
Opening up a whole island of monkeys.
You're listening to the Great Beaver Fiasco.
The Ozarks of Arkansas have got Beaver Lake. Beaver Water's drunk by 1 in 7 in the state. Beaver Dam, Mississippi's a nice duck hole place to have a hot dang beaver darn great damn day.
Great
Harvest Bread Company.
Yes, Great Harvest. Very convenient location right on Front Street.
Check out their sandwich of the month. It's always something new and exciting and fun each time the calendar changes. And their regular sandwich menu is also amazing. Breakfast sandwiches, lunch sandwiches. My favorite is the roasted red pepper chipotle steak sandwich.
Ooh.
I love that. Yes.
Sounds good. And they do have a lot of sweet staples like the cinnamon roll, which is delicious. But they also have the sticky bun, which is pecan rolls on a cinnamon roll base. So nummy.
And every day of the week, they have something else on the menu. They might be serving brownies one day and then something else, maybe a monkey bread or something the other. You never really know. So check online for your next surprise at
Great Harvest Bread Company.
Have a gosh dang beaver darn great damn day.
We are back with the Great Beaver Fiasco, and we are talking to local historian Roger Noll. We have our big gnaw coming up, so we're going to gnaw on this with Roger. And
it's not coming up; it is the big gnaw.
It is coming up. Oh yeah, that's right. Thanks.
So quickly.
And just to clarify,
you're right.
Roger Noll is not a historian. He is just a guy that happens to know a lot of history about Beaver Dam.
I think you're a historian, so I will always call you a historian. You're a guy who's a historian.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Or a historian who's a guy.
Speaking of weird.
Yeah, and our previous episode 3, we were really quite lucky to have Annette Camps joining us, talking about the history of the Beaver Dam Area Community Theater starting in 1964. And as that conversation switched to our big gnaw and we were talking about history, it just casually came up another monkey story in Beaver Dam, but Craig, I was kind of confused because it turns out Beaver Dam has multiple monkey sites in its history.
Because I've asked people about this before as well, and I said, yeah, I heard from Roger Noll. He said there used to be like a monkey island out in Swan Park, and people would be like, oh yeah, I remember that. And I was like, oh, okay, you saw the monkey island? They're like, oh yeah, there were monkeys there. But Roger, people are mistaken, aren't they? Because while there has been a monkey island, which has been the subject of actually multiple Great Beaver Fiasco podcasts, even though this is only our fourth one, nobody alive has probably seen Monkey Island in Beaver Dam.
Well, I'm trying to think if they were 90.
Okay.
Would they have, if they were really young
at the time.
Yeah.
Because what year would Monkey Island have been a thing?
I think it would have been like in the late 20s, and it might have gone into the 30s. But
when people say that they, and I'm talking about people maybe in their 40s, 50s, 60s, say, I remember.
Have not.
They did not see. What did they see likely? What did they
saw
see?
Swans.
Okay.
Definitely swans.
Swans don't look like monkeys.
No,
though.
big difference there.
There were three lakes or ponds in the old Vita Park, which was the spa resort that George Swan started here in Beaver Dam. The one that later became the swimming pool, which was about as high as your knees, but they actually gave you swimming lessons there.
Oh, wow. Huh.
That one is the one that's been filled in and would have been over by the pavilion.
So, Roger, do you think maybe people were confusing the swimming area with children with Monkey Island?
No, I don't think so. And then the next one, which was where the singing fountain was, that one, then the final one, which was right behind the band shell, that was the one that had Monkey Island on it. There were little toys for the monkeys to play with. There were several monkeys in there. And then, unfortunately, what happened was, and you'll see there, very high fencing, and I don't know if they didn't have a real good top on it or what, but one of the monkeys escaped.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And it bit a little girl.
Oh.
And that was the end of Monkey Island.
Do we know how Monkey Island came to be? Do we know how
was
Monkey
this typical
Island?
in small towns?
Yeah, have you heard about this anywhere else?
I think Beaver Dam is unique in this.
Okay.
Again, a very unique place is Beaver Dam. Its history is storied.
Yeah, and there's really not a lot of information then in the history. I know there's the picture in the Dodge County Historical Society of Monkey Island because I remember walking by it. I think I was with you, Thomas.
Well, but you can only
We were
just
together,
see that
yes.
little. It's like the band shell is kind of like here, and it's only like a little bit to the right. It's a huge picture.
Well, that's right. It was you there, too, because I remember walking by it, and you just said in passing, oh, that's just Monkey Island.
It was very it was almost too casual.
It was way too casual. You can't just say, oh, that was just Monkey
How
Island.
do you not know about Monkey Island?
But then after Monkey Island, that's when it became just like a grassy area, and it had like a light in the middle of it. And that's where the swans would always be. There were usually 2, but it did have as many as 4.
Okay, swans, actual swans
Actual
living.
swans.
Which I can imagine would be easier to take care of than monkeys because someone would have to bring them food. I mean,
The monkeys.
Make
And
sure they
they're
were
living in
staying
a
in the
cold
cage.
climate. So what do they do in winter?
I really don't know.
Yeah, we don't even really know how, like, there's no, like, records at the time of, like,
It
the
did
city
look
council.
like there was like a little house there or something, but I mean, gosh, it would get really cold there. So, but it was the same way with the zoo.
And that's what I led into this with. A lot of people that thought when I would ask them, Monkey Island, they would say, yeah, I saw the monkeys. They were in the playground area. No, you didn't see the monkeys. You saw the zoo. So not only was there a Monkey Island, not only did we have swans in Swan Park, but there was an actual zoo there?
Yes, right where the playground area is on Vita Street. That's actually the site of the original hotel that was built for the spa. In that area, I mean, there was like high metal fencing. You would walk in and you would go into that little building. There's that little building like in the center there.
Yeah.
And it was really dark in there. But to the right would be like 5 or 6 cages, and to the left would be like 5 or 6 cages. And there was a fox in there, and I think there might have been a badger, and there was a mink. And then there were ducks, and there were, chickens, and it was more like kind of like a petting zoo. The one thing that I remember that, again, it was there when I was a little kid, like when I was like 5 or 6 years old.
So this is 60s, 70s?
It'd be like around 62, 63.
Wow.
There was a peacock, and it just was a beautiful peacock. But unfortunately, it seemed like whenever you went there, all of its feathers were like up. I mean, it was a real joy when finally it just displayed. Just the colors were amazing. I remember that. And then there were, where the basketball court is right now, there was a deer park kind of in there.
We don't even really know if these are like under municipal control, if the parks or whatever the parks department is at the time is doing it, or if it was just a local person. It was the city.
It was the city, yeah.
That's absolutely shocking. And
again, I don't know what they did during the wintertime for those animals either. Maybe somebody knows out there who's older than I am.
So the monkeys bit a girl, and so they were gone.
Right.
Why we don't have swans there anymore?
Well, wonderful kids. They.
What happened?
Well, they were killed.
Oh.
The swans were.
They were stoned to death.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Gee,
wow.
that is terrible.
Yep.
I don't know how
What
much
else
more
can
to
I
recover
say?
from this.
Yeah, you can't really go
It was a
anywhere from
terrible
that.
thing. It's similar to, all of those pillars that were on the top was a beautiful light. And those were all destroyed too by kids throwing rocks at those lights.
And so the swan song would have been like in the 60s then?
Oh yeah, it was probably maybe 64, 65, I'd say.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's disappointing.
Segueing away from the stoning of the swans into something else that Annette did bring up in episode 3 of the Great Beaver Fiasco. Like and subscribe on YouTube and also on Facebook. She mentioned something about an escaped cheetah or leopard. It seems like there's a storied history about exotic animals in Beaver Dam. Have you heard anything about this, Roger?
No, I just have a passing memory of it, that it happened. But for instance, you talked that you thought there was some place that had giraffes, and I've never heard of that. So,
And that said it was someplace north of town, and it wasn't the same people that had the kangaroo that they brought into a McDonald's that made nationwide, if not global,
Well, that was like a
headlines.
decade ago, right?
That was just in the
and
last
I think
10
that
years.
was a
there
service
was
animal.
a very large mink farm right by Crystal
Lake?
Crystal Lake Beach.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, right, because I remember hearing about that with the Frisbee golf. They used to store ice there, and there used to be a mink farm. And
Well, that used to be where the rolling rink was, right? The
Well,
rolling
I
skating
mean,
rink?
that's
far.
not where the mink farm was. The mink farm was more up by where Kepsel kind of is.
Speaking of strange things, is it all rumor that skate place was completely bulldozed, skates and all, into the ground?
That I'm not aware of either. I wasn't here when that happened.
Wow.
That was one of the rumors I had heard.
Skate
that-
place or rolling?
Dark history.
Roller
Roller
skating
rink. Yeah, it
place.
was
Yeah,
a
roller
roller
rink. They just
Actually, it was a very popular place in like the 30s and 40s. They used to have like huge big bands out there, like Glenn Miller and
oh wow.
Really?
yeah.
So that brings us into another area of high strangeness in the city of Beaver Dam, and that is a story that you told me once, Roger, about a couple of kids in the 1800s. Do you happen to recall this story of these kids that were off? I believe they were at the Burnett drop-off into the lake over there, and
Well, it's called Dennings Point.
Denning. Oh, that's called Dennings Point.
Dennings.
Okay.
Yeah, it was at the
I
end of
never
Denning
knew
Street.
what that was called.
That was all swamp back then. Almost all of like the lakefront, that was all swamp. They had to fill that all in to build there. But yeah, what I did was when I was down at the Historical Society, and occasionally people don't come in, so it gets a little boring. So I would they had bound all of the old Beaver Dam Arguses, and I would just start paging through them. And I started I think in 1881, and I got as far as 1889. But one story that just shocked me, I turned the page and I just couldn't believe it. And I think the headline was, "Children Scream Running into Town." And okay.
That's ominous.
And what it was these kids were up at Dennings Point and they were playing, and out of the swamp started to rise, and what they called an airship rose above them, and it was, well, they described it as cigar-shaped. But you have to remember, now cigars nowadays are straight, whatever. But in those days, you would roll the leaf, so it actually was cylindrical, kind of. I mean, it was tapered at both ends. So they said it was made of metal. It had flashing colored lights that went around, and it hovered over them for a significant amount of time, and then it just shot out into space.
Wow.
And the kids came running into town, and they were just crying. The report said that the parents tried to calm them down, but they were just agog. They were just crazy. The article is just written like these kids are nuts. I just found it interesting. They called it airships, and it just described a UFO to a T.
Wow, I love that story.
What does this tell you, Roger? What are some of these unique, and I'm not talking about the supernatural necessarily, but these fun-loving monkeys that we used to have on an island, this superstar, Fred MacMurray. What does the history of Beaver Dam, Wisconsin mean to you?
Well, it just means, it means everything to me, to tell you the truth. And to tell you the truth, I didn't know about all of this stuff, until I started really researching it. In my research, I've just found that what a unique, wonderful place, Beaver Dam, and what the history is just amazing. And when I tell these stories to people from outside of Beaver Dam, they are just astounded. They cannot believe that this city has such a rich history. It's just amazing. And looking at the people that are up at the Wall of Fame at the high school, every one of those stories is amazing. And of course, we not only have Fred MacMurray being a Hollywood movie star, we also had Brian Donlevy. And of course, we had Eric Kolkhorst. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, in fact, one of my favorite stories is if you went to Broadway, New York, in 1934, I think it's the week of November 15th, you could actually go see Fred MacMurray in a play, Brian Donlevy in a play, and Eric Kolkhorst in a play. 3 guys from Beaver Dam starring in plays on Broadway at the same time.
Well, then they should have just called it Beaver Dam.
Beaver Way.
Yeah, Beaver Way.
So you're there on Broadway. You only have enough money for one ticket. Which one are you going into?
Well,
it's going to be Fred MacMurray, isn't it?
Well, it was a musical, so probably, I would probably enjoyed that more.
Yeah.
The other 2 were very heavy dramas. So.
Roger, your stories, I think, have this way of opening up Beaver Dam, and certainly being of a younger generation myself, of being a millennial, my understanding of Beaver Dam is from stories of my grandfather maybe working here, or that Beaver Dam has a blue-collar history. But when you open up Beaver Dam, you show me the history of the grocery, you show me the history of Fred MacMurray and all the individuals and the nuances of. And you're opening up this idea of what I thought about Beaver Dam from being 1 or 2 things to being 100. Do you think there is a magic to small towns that needs to be spread and shared through stories like what you do at the library and what you've done for the last 20 plus years?
Well, I wish more towns would do it, because I think they would have their own little niche of what makes them special. But the things that I talk about, the famous people and whatever, that's great. But a lot of it is, for me and for the people that come and listen to my talks, it's the memories. It's to say, oh, that was where that was. And oh, I remember going into that store, or I worked at this place. And it just brings back good memories.
And an amazing story after an amazing story here about small-town America, Beaver Dam, Wisconsin, local historian, just a guy we know, Roger Noll here, sharing this insight on today's program.
Although, I believe, L.A., this is not our final question.
It's not our final question. We do have a random question. We would like you to select from a hat.
This is a new thing we started. I knew we're 4 episodes in, so
this is only the second time
it could be any
we've
subject.
Done this.
And we've written this so that tiny little dolls could read what the words are. So you may need to get your readers out for
our Fiasco branded magnifying glasses have not come in yet. Oh, is this one that you've written?
Oh, well, then he should be able to see
yeah,
it.
this should be
the letters are a little bit
far
bigger,
easier
but I
font.
have no idea why you're shaking your head.
That's not good.
What would your younger self not believe about your life today?
Ooh, very historical.
L.A.
Well, very much ties in.
It does.
Wow.
Well, that I made it this far.
That you retired at 40. Yeah, I feel like that's a whole show in and of itself.
That is.
Yeah, we're not going to get in that.
That does sound like another show.
Yeah. I would not have expected me to come back to Beaver Dam.
Oh.
I really wouldn't have.
Are you glad you did?
Oh, yeah. It's the best decision I've ever made.
So where did you come back from?
So I started off being an attorney in Madison, a corporate attorney, insurance. Then I got promoted to corporate headquarters in Chicago.
But you came back home because Beaver Dam has value to you.
Oh, yeah. It's where I wanted to be. And I'll tell you, what happened was I went to a class reunion, and I just looked around, and I thought to myself, this city has done so much for me. And I said, and I have not done one thing for it. And so that's just, like a couple of years later, I said, oh, I'm going to go back.
I think another excellent demonstration of how rich full of stories that Beaver Dam really is. And Roger, thank you again for joining us here. The Great Beaver Fiasco. You can always like and follow us on YouTube at Supper Club Media. You can also like and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. We have this podcast on Podbean and Spotify. And guys, I believe that will do it for this episode of The Great Beaver Fiasco. Still slightly off.
Asco.
And cut.
Beaver Dam's New York is where the dead once played.
Nearby.
Beaver Dam, Wisconsin's where Fred MacMurray was raised. Beaver Dam anywhere's a great place to stay and have a gall dang beaver darn great damn day. Beaver Dam, Wisconsin's got peonies and parades. Beaverton, Oregon's where shoes are made.
Sorta.
Beaver Dam everywhere the people all say have a gosh dang beaver darn great damn day.